probably by another vehicle. But members of the jury, in order to get knocked forward, it has to be in the lanes of travel to begin with. Now let's look at T1 through 5. Okay, that's T1. T2 is from the parking lot looking toward the hydrant. Okay, you see all this area here behind the white line, parking lot area. T3 is another view of that area off the travel lane, okay? Where if the girls were correct, that he was standing facing the vehicle, what did Dolan tell us? He knows his weapon, he's an armorer, he knows how it works, and he knows his own weapon. It ejects out to the right, the shell ejects out to the right, 4 to 6 feet with his weapon. So he'd have to be facing south at the time of his discharge of the weapon for the shell casing to go out into the travel lane. If he was facing the pizza place, it would get ejected out into this area here, off the roadway, bottom of the lot, this breakdown area, somewhere in that area. Okay. You've heard about state of mind. Dolan's actions after the event. It's within 10 seconds that he arrives down at the end of that street, pulling up right behind Mr. Vincent. When he sees Vincent pull over. For all he knew, Vincent was taking off, but he sees him pull over. So you have actual evidence of Dolan's state of mind. What did he do? Did he run and hide? Did he get back in his truck and go home? No. He drove to Mr. Vincent, and he told you why. He said, I'm responsible. I just discharged my weapon. If medical aid is needed, I'm going to render it. And he did so. That's a state of mind. It's not a malicious mind by any stretch of the imagination. So he tries to help, and he does help. Sit down, you're going to make the blood circulate. He looks around for what he thought he had a tourniquet. Didn't find the actual tourniquet, so he looked around for something he could make one with. Right? He didn't say, you're out of luck. You're out of luck, young man. I can't find my tourniquet. He improvised, adopted, and he came up with the sweatshirt to make the tournament. He called 911. He identified himself. He told them where to come, told them to send help. He spoke with the officers arriving, told them what happened. He spoke with Major Tannen. He did a talk with him. Just him and the Major. Told them what happened. He did a walkthrough. And he even gave an interview. He cooperated fully. That's his state of mind. I have to talk about Detective Siebowitz. And it was very helpful to all of us about setting up the scene and how the evidence was collected and all that. But one of the things he talked about was this, he called it a zone of possibility, and something that he learned in his coursework from a Mr. Gardner. And the problem, I'm going to bring up Exhibit 78. Okay. The problem with that testimony, he's trying to, he told us it was impossible to get a trajectory because this was glass and most of it was blown out. and there was no end point. He couldn't get, he said it was impossible to do a trajectory in this case. But Professor Gardner's theory of zone of possibility, which Detective Siebowitz used, requires as a starting point a trajectory line. He acknowledged that. And then all you do from that is you determine where along the trajectory line you've already established the shooter could possibly be. So how could you create a zone of possibility if you don't have the starting point, which is the trajectory line? Put that aside for a minute. What he says was, well, what he based his whole theory on was the B pillar not being struck by a bullet. Because what he says is that if a shot came from anywhere in this area, it would have to strike the B pillar. And I asked, remember, if there's no one in the vehicle and it just passes through, okay. But the problem here, not a problem, it's a known fact. The bullet never had a chance to reach the B pillar because before it got that far, it struck the arm of Mr. Vincent. So what difference does it make that the B pillar was never struck? It never had, there was no opportunity for the B pillar to be struck because the arm absorbed the bullet. And Mr. Vincent was forward. His arm was forward of the B pillar. He told us that. Now, he says he turned it one way or the other, but he's forward of the B pillar. That's no other way to look at that. So the zone of possibility theory just doesn't apply in this case. And then you might recall, I want to bring up Exhibit N for you. There was this discussion between the prosecutor and Detective Siebowitz about where people usually sit and where their arms usually are in a vehicle. That whether or not it's against the B pillar or that area of the vehicle. In Exhibit N, we see this actual vehicle involved. It's an armrest. Now, whoever made this vehicle, Audi, must have put an armrest there for a reason. Because people rest their arms on armrests. You drive, armrest, shoulder. Shoulder would be right in front of the B pillar. Why is this important? Because we know where the bullet entered, the back of his arm, right? It had to enter somehow. Dominic says, well, he turned to the right, put his arm down in front of his chest to block himself. Now, how believable is that? And he didn't put it up to protect his head area? Because he doesn't want to say the back of his arm was exposed. Because then it doesn't mesh with that whole B pillar theory. The bullet hole, Detective Siebowitz is very candid about that, and he believes that was the bullet hole. We'll never actually know because the rest of the window was blown out. I'm not sure how big a deal that is because we all know it went through the driver's window somewhere. He acknowledged that there was chemical testing that could have been done to see if there was any metallic lead around that hole because of the friction of a bullet when it passes through something. That was not done. I guess it would have been nice to know if it was, but it wasn't. couple more areas I'd like to explore with you. Because at some point, you have to assess credibility. And that takes into account everything you saw and heard. And the three boys in the Audi, okay? Let's start with Dominic Vincent. Confirmed untruths. Speed of the vehicle. Before he ever knew that Detective Kennett did the speed analysis, he said, and he acknowledged here, he said in his initial interview, he wasn't going that fast. We know that's untrue. He talked about first aid at a press conference with his attorney. No first aid offered at all to me. His attorney said it on his behalf. Sitting right there, never interrupted to stop that. We know that's untrue. He said Dolan told him, while Dolan's talking on the phone, sit on the effing guardrail. You heard Dolan's 911 call. Dolan told you that's the only call he made in the presence of Mr. Vincent. That's not there. He said, Dominic said, well, he touched my shoulder and told me, shut the F up, it's only your arm. Again, while talking on the phone. That's not on the 911 call. Dominic said when he got off the exit, there were no other vehicles in front of him on Route 3. He was just driving slow now. We saw in the Shell station video, there were 2 cars ahead of him. You may have saw this. A number of times when he was testifying on direct, he was asked a question, he said, sorry, 1 second. Then he gave an answer. You could see him searching for an answer. Was it a pre-planned answer? Why does he say, on more than one occasion, sorry, 1 second. Looking around, you can see his eyes shift. These are things you can observe. What else does he tell us? Told us he saw the Dolan fly in the parking lot, but then admitted he never saw him enter. He only saw him when he was on the side, so how could you see him fly in? Said Dolan went across the hood, hopped across the hood, around to the other side, somehow did all that, steadied on his feet, took out a gun, and shot at him. First of all, the time doesn't allow for that. Second of all, no one corroborated him on that, even his own passengers. He talks to hospital personnel. And one version he gives was he was up the road when the person drove up, shot him. Another version he gives, he came to a stoplight, and a man came next to him and shot him at the stoplight. And he says, well, I was under medication. Well, he said other things that were accurate. He was noted. His name, his births, things of that nature were accurate. And if he was under medication, isn't it convenient that he took himself out of that parking lot at the place he was trying to say he was shot back then? Because he doesn't want to be in that parking lot, because he knows he tried to run Dolan over. So he's got to take himself out of there. He can't know in the hospital that there's video. Tells you he's going very slow toward Dolan. But then acknowledge he put his foot to the floor. And we know what the cook said. sped toward him, screeching tires. He acknowledged turning in a direction, the same direction that Dolan was moving to get out of the way. He mocks Dolan about type of first aid he rendered. He mocks Dolan about babbling on about wanting to get home to his family. Now, Vincent Grieco, one of the second people, and the older of the two brothers, I'll give him this. He admitted to his previous lie about the speed. His buddy, he admitted to it. So what else was he not candid about? What else was he telling fibs about, you know? He tried his best to back away from the testimony about Dominic driving at him. And when confronted with his prior statement that said just that, he just tried to, well, I really didn't mean that. He supplied a drawing, Exhibit 19. Now, this is the front of the vehicle. Now, cars don't have triangles. That was drawn just to show the front. There's the front of the vehicle. And where's the X? Right up near the front corner. He tried to back away from that as well. Sure, he looks up to his big brother. You can judge demeanor of people. He appeared to be someone easily led by these older two boys. And by the way, how long would it take to say, don't say he was speeding on the highway? You know? So even Joseph says, seemed like a normal drive down the highway. And I had my head in the phone. You know? How long does it take to say, don't say he tried to run him over? I say that as fast as I just said it right now. Right? Okay. Outside the jurisdiction, Dolan acknowledged he's not in Pawtucket at the time. He doesn't have the same authority. And you've already been instructed on that, and I've just addressed it. He acted as a citizen in his own words, out of what I felt in my heart. And what we've talked about so far and all the actions we know Dolan took from the video and what we've heard him say, you know, and you will judge his credibility. He was under some pretty rigorous cross-examination yesterday. It's not with malice that he acted, it's with the opposite of malice. Intent was to safeguard others, to prevent others from being injured. And when he was questioned, why? Well, he said, I've been doing that for 16 years. First as a Marine, then as a policeman. Again, I'll conclude where I started, members of the jury. The what-if game is easy to play. What if he had just ignored it? Just went home? Let it be someone else's problem. You know? Initially, he had no choice in that regard. When he was on 95, the best he could get was 2 letters of a plate. He had no shot at trying to catch him, and he said nor would he ever do that, because he would be just as dangerous as Dominic at that point. He doesn't have police lights, he doesn't have sirens. He has a white truck that he used that day, took it into Tucket to get the kid the bike. And yeah, he was a little late in getting it registered. This case is not about the registration of that vehicle. So, he thought that car was long gone, and for good reason, because of the speed. He got off that exit to go home, and lo and behold, there it was. Now he doesn't have the choice anymore. Well, he has the choice, but as a good conscientious citizen, coupled with his training and his life of service to others, he can't ignore it. He's trained and was trained to protect and serve. That's what he was doing, even though as a citizen that day. That's not malicious conduct. That's just good citizenship. So I ask you, members of the jury, I don't get a chance to stand up again after Mr. Guillermo argues. We'll be here all day, going back and forth. This is it. So I ask you on behalf of Officer Dolan to please return a verdict of not guilty on all counts. Thank you for your attention.